For this game's exciting turn 1, Sam plays a Steam Vents tapped and passes. John plays a Fury Calm Snarl tapped and passes. Tom plays a Forest and casts Land or Elves. While Extra the Enchanter plays a Forest, casts Explore, and follows up with a tapped Divine Glimmer Snarl before passing to Sam. On his second turn, Sam plays a Swamp and casts Demir's Signet. He passes. John plays a Tainted Peak and a Magda, Brazen Outlaw. He passes to Tom. Tom plays a Swamp, then casts an Arcane Signet, Birds of Paradise, and Basilisk Collar in order. That's about all he can do for now, so he's forced to pass to Extra. Extra plays his first 2 land drops, that being Hinterland Harbor and Rejuvenating Springs, giving him enough mana to cast Oracle of Moldiah, and with his effect, play Yavimaya Coast for his 3rd land drop. Sam starts by casting Talisman of Indulgence and using it to cast Bitter Blossom. He then passes to John. John plays the Command Tower, casts the Zorn, then swings at Tom for 2 with his Magda, triggering her effect to make 2 treasures. After that, he passes. Tom first casts Ob Nixilis the Fallen, and then plays a tapped Overgrown Tomb, triggering Ob Nixilis to deal 3 to Extra and give himself 3 counters. With all his mana spent, he passes. Extra also begins the turn with a landfall creature, his being a Lotus Cobra. It is followed up by Kadama's Reach, putting an island into play tap and a mountain into his hand. The island entering triggers Cobra to make a blue mana. Yet to play a land, Sam plays the added mountain, triggering Cobra a second time, making a green, in order to cast his commander, Loot, the key to everything. He passes it back to Sam. On Sam's upkeep, Bitter Blossom triggers, making a fairy and losing 1 life. He then plays a Luxury Suite and casts his commander, Obeka, Splitter of Seconds, before passing the turn. John plays a Sundown Pass, then casts Infernal Grasp on Ob Nixilis. Clearing the way, he swings Magda at Tom, triggering her effect to make 2 treasures. Tom takes the hit, and in his second main, John casts Hell to Pay for X equals 3 on Loot, paying for Ward, killing Loot, and making 2 tapped treasures. He then passes to Tom. Tom plays a Rogue's Passage, then casts an Ashaya, Soul of the Wild, before passing. Extra plays a Felwar Stone, as well as recasts his commander, Loot, the key to everything, and with nothing else to do, passes the turn, hoping his commander gets to stick around this time. On Sam's upkeep, Bitter Blossom triggers, making a fairy and losing 1 life. He then plays a mountain and casts Bone Horror Dracosaur, before going to combat, attacking John with Obeka. John takes the hit, triggering Obeka to gain 2 extra upkeeps. This triggers Bitter Blossom, Bone Horde, exiling the top 2, making a 3/1 Dino plus a treasure, followed by another Bitter Blossom and Bone Horde trigger, this time exiling 2 and making 2 treasures. In the second main, he casts Ring of Valkis, equips it to Obeka, and passes. John plays Pillar Verge Pathway for turn, then casts his commander, Vihaan, Goldwaker, who triggers at the start of combat, turning his treasures into 3/3 creatures. He attacks Extra with 3 treasures, and Magda, triggering her effect to make 2 new treasures. After the damage is dealt, he passes the turn to Tom. Tom misses his land drop, and also casts his commander, the Gitrog, Ravenous Ride. He then equips him with the collar, and saddles using Ashaya. He attacks John with the stacked Gitrog, triggering his effect, sacrificing Ashaya to draw 8, and play 3 lands tapped. He passes to Extra. On Extra's upkeep, Loot triggers, exiling the top 4 cards from his deck, which should have been 3. He plays Rockfall Veil from exile, triggering Cobra, casts an Alfeshni, followed by Harrow from exile, sacrificing a forest and copying it with Nalfeshni. Both Harrows resolve, getting 4 forests, triggering Cobra 4 more times, and using the mana to cast Arcane Signet. Play Kedria Triumph tapped from exile, again triggering Cobra, and lastly casting Reality Shift from exile on Obeka and Bone Horde, thanks to Nalfeshni giving him an additional copy. Extra then passes back to Sam. On Sam's upkeep, Bitter Blossom triggers, making a fairy and losing 1 life. He first casts Rousing Refrain, targeting Tom, and making 7 red. With that mana, he casts Sphinx of the Second Sun, and equips it with his ring. He goes to combat, swinging the Sphinx at extra, and the rest of his creatures at Tom. In his second main, Sphinx triggers, giving Sam some extra steps, which he goes to immediately, triggering Bitter Blossom and Refrain to lose a counter. John casts Generous Plunderer, which he generously sacrifices to Deadly Dispute, drawing 2 and making 2 treasures. He plays a Sulphurous Springs for turn and casts Misfortune Teller, exiling a forest and making 2 more treasures. Next is combat, where Vihaan triggers once again, beefing up his treasures, followed by an all-out attack at Tom, triggering Magda and Teller, exiling Plunderer to make a 2/2 rogue. Tom takes the massive hit and succumbs to John's wallet. Once that is finished, John passes, but not before Sam casts Chaos Warp on loot, paying for ward, and flipping a Nature's Lore with the resolution. Extra's only play now is a Great Furnace, and recasting his warped loot, the key to everything, hoping he doesn't get transported for a 3rd time. With that, he passes back to Sam. On Sam's upkeep, Bitter Blossom triggers, making a fairy, plus losing 1 life, and Refrain to lose 1 counter. He recasts his commander, Obeka, Splitter of Seconds, and equips it with Ring, giving it haste. He attacks extra with his flyers, while attacking John on the ground. John blocks a Manifest with his Rogue, and extra blocks a fairy with Nalfeshni. Once damage is dealt, Obeka triggers, gaining 2 extra upkeeps, triggering Bitter Blossom, Ring, and Refrain, losing a counter, which he casts, adding 2 red, and resuspending Refrain. All his stuff triggers again, followed by the Sphinx trigger, causing another round of upkeep triggers, before finally passing to John. John plays a Blightstep Pathway for turn, he casts a Ruthless Technomancer, sacrificing Vihaan to make 4 treasures, followed by a recast of Vihaan, using his effect to once again animate his wolf. He then attacks Sam with everything, triggering Teller to exile Marsh and make 4 treasures alongside Magda. John blocks with a Dino on Magda, Manifest on Zorn, Obeka on a treasure, Sphinx on another treasure, a fairy on Teller, and 5 fairies on another 5 treasures. The other creatures connect, and after combat, John reborns Teller with Technomancer, exiling Magda, and making a rogue to finish off his turn. On Extra's upkeep, Loot triggers, exiling the top 4 cards from his deck, which should have been 3. He plays Stormcarved Coast, triggering Cobra, casts Flaming Tyrannosaurus from exile, triggering Nalfeshmi to make a copy. He casts Wayward Swordtooth from exile, triggering both Tyranno at John, followed by Cultivate from exile, again triggering both Tyranno on Sam and John, and finishes it off with 2 Pongifies from exile with the help of Nalfeshni on both Tyrannos, triggering their effects to deal 3 to both Sam and John, while triggering their death effects to deal a total of 16 damage to Sam and John, taking them out and leaving Extra the victor.